my lessons as a real estate investor and how I got to where I am today. Hey guys, I realized I haven't had a podcast episode yet that shares my journey and how I got to where I am today. So that's what I'd like to share with you today. And there are going to be a lot of nuggets in here, a lot of wisdom and lessons learned that I think every single real estate investor and entrepreneur listening will be able to take and apply and use in their own lives to make it better, to make their investing better. So I'm really excited to dive into this. And I'd love, again, if you guys like this, to like it on whatever platform you're listening and make sure to give me your feedback. I'd love to hear what resonates for you in the comments below. So to start off, I think I was brought up with a very typical American upbringing. I didn't really watch for much. Of course, there were ups and downs and trials. Very much my parents worked, corporate for companies, not entrepreneurial or anything like that. And I was able to go to the University of Southern California, USC in LA, through a program they had where I actually kind of did like early enrollment. I skipped my senior year of high school and started college when I was only 16 years old, which was kind of like amazing. And I love that my parents trusted me in order to do that. And I learned so much at USC. I loved my time at college and the opportunity as somebody who loves school to really learn and go deep with these amazing professors. My focus was business. I had a business administration bachelor's with a concentration in finance. So I really liked numbers and analysis and systems from even then. And I wanted to get into finance to help people, right? To help people because finances are a major issue for people. And if your finances are in order, it's a key factor to having your life in order. So I graduated and I worked in finance. I actually worked for a fixed income asset manager for a year. And I found that I was so far removed from actually helping people, right? I was just doing spreadsheets all day in this office with windows that didn't open where they blasted the AC in Southern California. I felt like I was in the Arctic. And I realized that I was not connected enough to helping people there. And it was not the life that I wanted. I could not see being in an office like this for another decade or more.
Well, I've been thinking about it, and I think it's the right thing to do.
So I left that and I went back to school and got my high school teaching credentials. So I taught high school math. Now, during this time, also, I coached SAT on the side. I did like SAT tutoring. I also had my own business making customizable children's books. It did probably go very more successful in other entrepreneurial endeavors since then, but I did start my learning on that journey. So I got my teaching credential and I taught high school math. After I got my credential, my husband and I moved from Southern California, where we've been living, to Northern Virginia outside of Washington, D.C., which I was excited to get out of California and be in Washington, D.C. I've lived in other places, lived in Washington State and Atlanta, Georgia, growing up. And so I was excited again to get out of California, even though that was my birthplace, and be somewhere else. So we ended up living in Washington, D.C. for almost a decade. And that was a very transformational time. So I started teaching high school in Northern Virginia, and I realized that there were a lot of great things that came from that. But then it was time that my husband and I wanted to start our own family, and I really couldn't see leaving my little baby that I wanted to have to go be with other people's kids all day. That just wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. Again, I didn't want to spend all my time serving someone else, even though I love helping people. Didn't want to do that. There has to be a way that I can help people and do what I love while also taking care of the child. So I started teaching online at homeschooling group, which was awesome. And I loved doing that. And we had kind of a hobby farm. So that was another business that I had and ran. So fun fact, if we want to talk anything about chickens, rabbits, pigs, ducks, and dairy goats, I could have a pretty in-depth conversation on any of those subjects along with gardening. And then with that, we also, with that house, we had this hobby farm, started renting out our basement. So we bought this, ideal forever home, dream home in 2013. And this was, a big 5-bedroom house for just my husband, myself, and our dogs. And realized after a few months, this was a lot more than we need. And I was working to figure out how I could not go back to teaching in public school, right? How I could quit teaching in public school with this idea of wanting to have a family and wanting to be available. So I was really open to how can I make money in other ways so I don't have to continue teaching in public school and be away from this baby I want to have. And so I realized I could rent out our basement. We knew some people, only a few, some of my husband's coworkers were self-managing their old primary residences. Like when they moved, they would keep their old house and rent it. So it's like, this was my first exposure to people who were landlords, okay, and to people who were doing it themselves. And I was like, hey, if they can do this, we can rent out our basement in the same way. So I actually asked these people for copies of their leases, used it, made my own, kind of putting all the pieces together. We listed the basement on Craigslist because that's where people were listing stuff back then, and ended up with our first tenants. And it was a little scary, right? You always imagine worst case scenarios. Everybody tries to tell you worst case scenarios. But, it's like, hey, it's a year. We'll see how it goes. And it turned out to be fabulous. It was so nice in another part of the house like that because we lived on 11 acres with other people with acreage around. So we didn't really have close neighbors. So it was nice to have some people there. There are several times that they were super helpful and came in handy, including a time when a bear got into our beehives and that was a huge fiasco. And I got a lot of bee stings. And one of the tenants of the basement helped me out a lot in that situation. So there were a lot of benefits I think people don't think about with house hacking and having someone else around. And I realized this was the easiest money that we were making. And so that's when I decided that real estate investing was really something to look into, to learn about, and to do more. I will be honest, I did not have some big investing plan. I didn't even think about long distance investing. I was still pretty small minded with all those things. And so I started with just investing locally. And Northern Virginia isn't a great investor friendly market. It appreciates a lot. And yet we were in a financial situation where we needed this thing to be in the black, right? Didn't have to make us a ton of money, but we weren't in a financial situation to focus on cap, focus on appreciation. Like I needed this to be in the black. So I found this niche of condos in the town nearest us. These were, condos from the 80s, and the condo fees were relatively low. Their rents were relatively high and their purchase price was relatively low. So it ended up working out that they were in the black. They had a decent return, honestly, well above average for the area. And it worked well. So we ended up save up for a down payment, get a condo. And that's what my husband and I did. We self-managed because if we had paid a 10% management fee, guess what? It would have been in the red. And so we self-managed. We only bought in the town near us so that if something came up, we could run up and do it. We leased it ourselves, we did the showings ourselves, all of that. And then a couple things happened in 2018, 2019 that really set the stage for my real estate investing. In 2018, I got my real estate license. We had made an offer on a place. It seemed like that could have been in part because of the agent we were working with. And I was like, I don't want this to happen again. I'm just going to get my real estate license. I can do that. I'll get real estate professional status and that'll have its benefits. And then I can be all in on this real estate investing. And so I did that. And the thing is, I didn't realize all the bureaucracy and all the learning that goes into and all the money that goes into being a real estate licensee. And I realized that in order to really be a master of my own deals, I needed to be doing a lot of deals. And so as soon as I got my real estate license, I realized I was going to be an active real estate agent. I was going to help other people as well. And that's what I started doing. Well, this did take time because it was all on my terms. And so, at that point, I did have two kids, and yet I never felt like I had to choose between them and work. This was something where I could do it on my terms, on my timeline, and we were able to make it work very well. So I got my real estate license in 2018, started helping other people as a real estate agent, in addition to doing our own deals. And the next big thing that was really transformational was in 2019, we bought our first long distance rental. And the story of how that happened was, again, it wasn't some huge plan of a lot of analysis. It was that there had been one of our typical condos fit our buy box perfectly in Northern Virginia that hit the market. So I get the pre-approval letter from the lender. We make the offer. And the thing is, this was like a multiple offer situation. So we made an offer as strong as we could while the numbers still worked. That's what we did. And then we had a pre-scheduled vacation to Myrtle Beach for a week. Leave, go to Myrtle Beach, waiting to hear, finally hear back from the listing agent that we were not the winning offer. So like any real estate investor or real estate agent, I'm like, oh, I wonder what the real estate market looks like here. Hop on Zillow and I start looking at properties. I was astounded by how affordable properties were in Myrtle Beach. I had looked at buying a beach house or rental property in the Outer Banks before. And so I was used to those prices, and then see what you could get in Myrtle Beach. You have a lot more bang for your buck. That's how I put it. And so I was like, well, this is relatively inexpensive. What are the rental rates like? So then I hopped onto Airbnb, see what the night rates were in these places. And I was floored for comparing what these places cost to what they were getting. So I got into price labs, did a little more deep dive, and I was like, this is amazing. This is what we need to do. And so found a place that looked great, scheduled a showing, found an agent, scheduled a showing, made an offer, and we ended up closing roughly 30 days later on a beach house, a short-term rental in Myrtle Beach. This was our first short-term rental, and it was our first long-distance property. And there were definitely issues that we had. So this was, over the summer, I think maybe July. So then we come back at the beginning of September, after the peak season, and we actually stay in the property we bought and work to get it all fixed up to our standards because, it had some wear and tear. It wasn't like the premium A quality rental that we wanted to have. And we immediately found a lot of issues, right? A lot of issues with quality in the house, a lot of work that needed to be done, and the clean air was not going to cut it. So we immediately had to fire him, find a new cleaner, do a lot of fix-ups during this week. Things like that happen, right? Things like that happen in real estate investing, and this is not unusual. And figured out over the months after that how to manage a short-term rental well, all of the systems. And this was, again, we were visiting for the first time September 2019. We all know it happened in 2020. So we had this new short-term rental, and for a period of time, all of Myrtle Beach was shut down and closed. We had to cancel bookings. We were not allowed to host people for about a month. But opened up after that, and due to the lifestyle we had with my business and how my husband could work, we went as soon as it opened up and actually stayed in this house in Myrtle Beach ourselves. And I actually had our third child in March 2020. So we were able to take our little newborn to Myrtle Beach. My parents came up, so the grandparents were able to see their newest grandbaby for the first time. And there's wonderful memories like that from owning short-term rentals that are really nice and I think help make some of the work worth it. So then in 2020, again, active real estate agent, mother of three, active real estate investor as well with long-term and short-term rentals. And of course, 2020 is what it was, right? Crazy year. And in that process, my husband and I realized that Northern Virginia had evolved a lot since when we moved there. It wasn't necessarily the environment we wanted to continue living in. So I thought objectively about, what I wanted in a place. So I wanted things to do. I want family-friendly activities. And yet I didn't want an area so big that we were going to be in traffic all the time or anything like that. And we settled on Chattanooga, Tennessee. And one of the things about Chattanooga, there's a ton to do. It's a very big city for a family with a lot of easy, accessible activities. And it was a great market for real estate investing. So at the end of 2020, I moved with my family from Northern Virginia to Chattanooga, Tennessee. We rent out our house in Northern Virginia. We're going to rent out the property for a year and a half and just see. Well, I ended up loving Chattanooga, and I had to restart my real estate agents there. So I restarted it, focusing on working with investors. I niched down to that because I was like, this is what brought me into real estate. This is what does well. My whole real estate agent business there in January 2021. At this point, I've got 3 kids. One of them's almost 1 year old. The others are 3 and 5. And I'm relaunching my real estate agent business where I knew one person in Chattanooga and she was a real estate agent, so not my client. So I focused on investors and long distance investors. I've lived in California, I've lived in Washington State, I've lived in the DC area. I know these areas. I know what investors are like there. I know what they're looking for. I know they can't find it locally. So let me help them find it in Chattanooga. So I really became an expert on working with investors on long distance real estate investing, on what people need, on the pros and cons or the benefits and the potential pitfalls that can happen of being a long distance real estate investor. So I was totally involved in real estate investing from my own personal portfolio and then on the agent side as well. And one of the early things I did with my real estate agent business in Chattanooga is I brought on a virtual assistant. After my first closing, I brought on a 40-hour-a-week full-time virtual assistant because I knew that if I wanted to grow this business to where I wanted it to be, I couldn't spend time on all the operational stuff, the bottom 80%. I needed to focus my time on my top 20% tasks that only I could do and that were the best use of my time. So I brought on a virtual assistant very early on, and I did not have some great system in place. I did not have SOPs. I had a Google sheet that was a checklist of what I did on the contract to close process. And then for the next contract I got, every step when I did it, I made a video. I just screen shared and I narrated and I said, this is what I do. The virtual assistant made a procedure from that. And then the next time we got something under contract, she could do it. And we just methodically, using that same method, gradually built her a whole library of procedures, a whole system that she could execute where she was doing all those operational tasks, all that bottom 80%, that a real estate agent didn't need to do. So that way I could focus on my top 3% tasks. And that blew up my business. By August, even with a virtual assistant, I had more business than I could handle myself. I needed to sleep. And so I started a team, which means I brought real estate agents on to help service these clients that I had. And we ended up having multiple agents and multiple virtual assistants to grow this business. And in 2022, the first full year, our team did 130 transactions for about 28 million in volume. There's no way I could have done that on my own. And that is the power that comes with leveraging other people such as virtual assistants. And seeing that difference that made is part of what started and prompted my husband and I to start Workergenics, which is a virtual staffing company where we help real estate investors, entrepreneurs, business owners to get virtual assistants in their business and get that leverage so their business can really have that exponential growth like I did with my team. So that's where Workergenics came from, in case you ever wanted the backstory on that. 2021 through 2023, continue to do investing, buy multiple single-family home long-term rentals in Chattanooga during that time, buy a couple more short-term rentals in Myrtle Beach as well, and grow this team as well. So I have my entrepreneurial business side and my real estate investing side that I am working on at the same time, plus everything else. In fall of 2023, I decided it was time for me to sell the real estate team. I just felt like I had put everything that I could into this team and given it everything I could. It was time for someone else to take it and lead it from there. It was totally like the sale went amazingly well with how everything fell into place. I thank God for making it go so well. And it was really from the end of August when I made that decision. And at the end of October, I was signing the closing paperwork and selling the team and moving on. So one of the things that my husband and I realized as I was selling this team was that we've always wanted to take time to travel full time. And selling the team, that was our last like in-person necessary activity. So by selling that, I was able to then travel full time with my family like we'd always hoped to do sooner than we had planned. So since October 2023, we got ready in February of 2024, we started traveling full time. So now what I do, my husband is our CEO of Workergenics, and he does those operations day to day. I focus my time on our real estate investing, overseeing the virtual assistants that are actually doing the management while I'm doing the high level on those real estate investing activities. And then also working with real estate investors to help them get that same time freedom, financial freedom, and location freedom that I have had. So I now have the opportunity to work one-on-one with investors. And then I also created my online course that investors can take to learn how to have virtual assistants, with everything they need to set the ground running if they know nothing about how to have a virtual assistant to take them from there to having an operational virtual assistant in their business. So my passion and my focus right now, I always love to help people, is to really help real estate investors who got started and maybe they're at the ceiling of what they can do on their own, those intermediate and advanced investors who need to get systems in place, who need to start running their portfolio like a business, who need to leverage with virtual assistants and technology. My passion is now coming in, walking alongside them and helping them do that. So I hope this has been helpful for you guys. But if you're interested in learning more or in running your portfolio like a business, go to adriennegreen.com. The link is below and get my freedom blueprint. These are the foundational things I put in place to create the lifestyle that I have now with the virtual assistants and systems so I could travel the world and still run my portfolio. Thank you guys so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you again next week.